Inside of the concentration camps during the Second World War, there were many different execution methods deployed by the SS guards that brought the lives of prisoners to an end. In front of thousands at roll call, many inmates inside of Auschwitz were hanged on gallows. Sometimes many different people were executed together at the same time on the same structure. Although the gas chambers were used mostly inside of the camps and inflicted death upon millions, shooting and the use of gunshot was deployed en masse inside the concentration camps too. At Auschwitz during some busy periods, there was so much killing going on that the gas chambers couldn't handle it, and people were dragged to discreet locations where they were thrown in pits and then shot. There was even a special German term developed for execution by gunshot inside of specific facilities within the concentration camps and extermination centres. This was known as Genickschuss or neck shooting, as the Nazis used gunshot to the neck to bring the lives of thousands to an end. But the Nazis took this further and even developed deceitful facilities where prisoners were executed in secret and they did not know what was coming for them. Today we look at the neck shooting facilities inside the camps, specifically one in which around 8,000 prisoners of war were executed within. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, as it really does help keep the channel going. The Genickschussenlage or neck shooting facilities were different extermination structures which were designed to appear that they were innocuous rooms, but the reality was that death and slaughter occurred here on a mass scale. Prisoners, or sometimes prisoners of war, men who were not even on the records of the concentration camps, were marched into these rooms and they would not come out alive. These facilities were used at Sachsenhausen, and they were used to carry out death sentences which were imposed upon the prisoners for different crimes, such as being part of the camp resistance. Inside these rooms, which were windowless, firing squads or individual executioners brought the life of someone to an end, and their remains were then taken to the camp crematoria. Within the rooms at Sachsenhausen too, there were larger groups of prisoners who were executed in this facility. But the neck shooting facilities, mostly on the whole, were deceitful rooms, which were designed to trick prisoners into thinking they would be getting some form of help and care. Inside of Buchenwald concentration camp, these rooms were used en masse. Buchenwald was a huge site in which 280,000 people passed through the barbed wire fences, and over 56,000 died inside the camp. The site was brutal, and there were many terrifying guards who worked here to bring the lives of inmates to an end. For example, Walter Gerhard Martin Sommer, who was known as a hangman for the fact he crucified 2 priests upside down. When the camp was liberated, one of the journalists who witnessed the evils of Buchenwald stated, "I asked to see one of the barracks. It happened to be occupied by Czechoslovaks. When I entered, men crowded around, tried to lift me to their shoulders. They were too weak. Many of them could not get out of bed. I was told that this building had once stabled 80 horses. There were 1,200 men in it, 5 to a bunk. The stink was beyond all description. They called the doctor. We inspected his records. There were only names in a little black book, nothing more. Nothing about who these men were, what they'd done or hoped. Behind the names of those who had died, there was a cross. I counted them. They totalled 242. 242 out of 1,200 in 1 month. As we walked into the courtyard, a man fell dead. 2 others, they must have been over 60, were crawling towards the latrine. I saw it, but will not describe it. There was a huge amount of death at the camp, much caused by the conditions of the site, where inmates were treated awfully and were given hardly any food, but were also forced to work incredibly hard. One former prisoner of the camp stated that the majority of executions at the camp took place using shootings in the spine at the base of the head, the neck shooting. This man's job was to look after the radio at the camp's execution block, and he counted the prisoners who were shot, arriving at the number of 8,483 Soviet prisoners of war being shot within the neck shooting facility. The camp's former commandant, Karl Otto Koch, a man who was later sentenced to death by the SS for embezzlement and murder, was even executed inside this facility by his former guards, being shot either by a makeshift firing squad or by a sole executioner. The neck shooting facility executions at Buchenwald were carried out under what was known as the Commissar Order, and thousands of Soviet prisoners of war were sent there to be executed. They were not admitted to the camp, but were shot at the front of the camp, just outside of the boundaries of Buchenwald. The Gestapo sought individuals who were classed as commissars, who were then sent to Buchenwald and were shot. The SS converted the former riding stables of their riding hall into the next shooting facilities, an execution facility of their own design. They wanted to ensure the shootings that happened there were swift and quick, and their executioners would use a single shot to the back of the neck to do this. The stables were quiet and were large, and a wall was created at the front to hide the prisoners going into the different execution chambers. The prisoners were led into the former hall stable, and these rooms looked like medical examination rooms or rooms that a doctor would look at patients inside of. They had medical equipment inside, including a pivotal piece of equipment for the execution process, a height measuring device. Soviet prisoners of war were led towards the height measuring device, and the guard then lowered and recorded their height as if they were having a medical exam, but the guard then left the room. Behind the measuring stick was a small hatch, a tiny opening, which was opened as the prisoner was stood with their back to it, and an executioner then poked a pistol or gun through the hole and quickly fired into the back of the victim's neck as he was stood facing the other way. It was horrific and swift, and the prisoners of war who entered here genuinely believed that they would get some form of treatment and care before being admitted to the camp to work. After the shots rang out, the victims fell forward, and even the floor of the next shooting facility was painted brown to hide the bloodstains, and there was drainage built in to help clean up the chambers at the end of the day's shooting. The facility would not be cleaned straight away after an execution to not delay the proceedings. Following the death, the corpse of the victim was then placed in a metal cart, and this was then taken by other prisoners to the crematoria, and the bodies were burned. In this manner, there were 8,000 prisoners of war who were shot in this way inside of Buchenwald. After over 8,000 executions within the camp, the facility was then stripped out and was made to appear like a stable again to hide the crimes of what happened, but it has been recreated today in the way that it worked during World War II. Neck shooting as an execution method was deployed by the Einsatzgruppe inside of occupied lands, but within Buchenwald and a few other concentration camps, there were different neck shooting facilities established to bring the life of prisoners to an end in ruthless, efficient ways. It was a concealed and hidden part of the Second World War and of the Third Reich's evil, and it is something that's not very well known about compared to the gas chambers. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.